Hi, this is a very quick ad hoc screencast to go through setting up the EKG channel trend in Persyst. I'm going to show doing this within the integration with Natus NeuroWorks. And so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Michael Guest, VP of Research and Clinical Applications for Persyst. And let's get started. I'm going to open up one of these recordings from the library and from the Persyst demo file library. And once that appears, we already have some trends calculated, and the heart rate's blank. So if we go into this and look at the EKG channel, we see it's set to FP1 to FP1. The reason for that is unless the EKG channel is told which inputs to use, then it won't calculate anything. So to set that up, we need to clear the trends so that it can reprocess using the new trend indication. And so let's go ahead and go to Modify Template Mode, and I'll pick the initial default setup to use as our baseline to get going. So now we have this open in modified template mode. I'm going to shrink this window down just a little bit to fit. So this is modified template mode. If I go to preferences, I don't have that modified template option available any longer. The trends are cleared, so what I can do is go ahead and click heart rate, go to EKG channel, and now these are selectable. And so which ones do I want to select? I'll go to the EEG page, and I can go to any one of these montages, but I want to see the input, the raw recording, to look at the raw channel labels that are being used. And ideally, for the EMU, the ICU, the ambulatories, the EKG channels or the ECG channel labels are harmonized. So if it's ECG-L, ECG-R, or EKG-1 to EKG-2, whatever those labels are, if they're the same across devices, then you can use the same trend setup for each one, because the labels aren't different. And again, it doesn't matter where the inputs are on the amplifier, whether it's X1, X2, ECG, Poly 1, Poly 2, it doesn't matter. The only thing that's being used to designate what these channels are in Persyst are the actual labels for those inputs. And so those are two different things, the actual input versus the labels. If they're not harmonized, you'll need more than one trend settings file because you're using different labels. But that's a good reason then to go ahead and have those labels harmonized so they always use the same labels for the EKG inputs, regardless of where they're plugged in. So with all that aside, I'm going to go ahead and change the sensitivity here, make sure that it looks like I have X1 and X10 as the inputs. So we'll just go X1, we'll use X1 to start. Now there are two channels for EKG, and in the trends, it's actually possible to overlay two inputs for this. I'm going to just do it with one first, and then I'll come back and show how to do the second one. So I'm going to click on this, go to the EKG channel, and we have X1, and we'll go ahead and pick ref. Now I could do X1 to X10 on the input, but what you can also do is have X1 to reference, X10 to reference, or ECG-L to ref, ECG-R to ref, whatever they are. If you have two EKG inputs, you can use them separately, overlay them, so that if one channel goes bad, you still have the other one in the trend. So just something to think about. But we're going to go ahead and do X1 to ref. And we actually have a second heart rate trend here. So if we go to the heart rate panel, there are two of these set up, and they're overlaid. So if we double click on this one, we get ECG channel. I've already set that one. And I think the other one was X10. We'll double check. So when I double click on the second bar down, I can configure this for X10 to ref. Now this extra step you don't have to do, but I'm going to set this up to use both of my ECG inputs. And so now when I go back to that versus baseline comprehensive trend panel that just has one of these, I can add the other heart rate. So I'm just going to scroll down alphabetically, and there's the other heart rate because the first one is already in there. I'm going to click OK. It adds it. I'm going to drag this gray bar up underneath the other one. Not one too far. And if these are a little slippery to move around, I can go to Preferences, Trend Preferences, and I can click the Panel tab, and let's get these back down where they belong. So it's left, right, heart rate, heart rate. Okay. So now I want to click on the second one and overlap previous. So now I've got a trend with both in there. And I can change the sizing. So if I went to this and set the height to 1, then the space that it takes won't be the same. So these are optional things that you can do. So now I've got 2 trends for heart rate overlaid. So if one goes bad, the other one still shows up. Okay, now I want to save these changes. And again, that extra second channel thing, that's optional. Go to Trend Preferences, Save As. So I've got this Trend Settings version P14, but when I install software updates, I don't want my changes to be overwritten. I can give it a special name. myhospital.mmx, whatever you'd like to call it. And I still have the old one opened up here. That's the one I started with, so I'm going to open that. Don't want to save changes to that. I want to open the My Hospital one. Click OK, and there they are. So if I double click on the gray bar, go to EKG channel, there's my inputs, and or I can just click on the label and pick any one of these. So now that they're in place, I can click Process. We'll see how they function. And if they're both working fine, they'll both be right on top of the other, and you won't see 2 trends. Only if one drops out would you see a difference there. And there's the heart rate, calculating along with everything else. And again, one of those inputs goes bad, I still have the other one being charted. So that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here. And I'm going to close this window and go back. So let's close this. And I don't need to make changes, but that is the last one I did, the myhospital.mmx. So I'm going to save that. And I'm back where I started, so I'm going to go here, Trend Preferences, because again, this is what we opened up when we started. Select Template File, C Drive, Program Data, Persyst. By the way, if you don't see Program Data, it's a hidden folder in a lot of Windows systems, not all. So if it doesn't show up, you just type in, and it should go there. Actually, we need the C, /C:\\. Program data goes right in there. Even if it's hidden, once you type that in this way it'll show up. Go to Persyst, and there's the My Hospital one. Click OK. And when I click Process, it'll go ahead and run. And there's my heart rate trend showing up right there. Now, that's an important thing. So once you go to process a recording, you want to make sure that in review, if you're processing it offline, that when you go to Trend Preferences, that you have that one selected, the one that has your EKG set up, that you select that trend preference using the Select Template file. And that'll pick up those customizations you made. And of course, if you're doing batch processing in Natus, or if you're running this from an acquisition machine, if we go back to the Natus database, View and Options, or Tools and Options, this is where Analyzer is set up. So on an acquisition system, under Analysis, for the Persyst Analyzer, you tell it which trend settings to use. So if you're going to process these offline using Persyst through Natus, that's where you go to the program data. As we were before, go into Persyst, there's that My Hospital. And now I'm telling this to use this. So if I were to tell it to process some other recordings through batch analysis, I can submit for analysis, turn these all off, turn on Persyst. And when I click submit, it's going to go through and process those with those settings. But if you're just doing it in review, as we're doing here, then that's where you go to the gear button and you select the trend template that you're going to use. In review, we're looking at the user interface, so we just go here, Trend Preferences, Select Template File, and here's the file that we created. So I went through this very quickly. I did add that second option for the second EKG channel, but a lot of recordings sometimes will lose one of the EKG leads, so I thought I would include that just as a option, so that if you lose one of those channels along the way, you still have the other one providing heart rate information. Happy to connect by web conference if there's any questions. Thanks. Have a great day.